All right. Well, welcome to today's podcast episode. Today's guest is Sarah, and I'd like to let her introduce herself.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Sarah. I am 19 years old and I was born and raised here in Windsor, Ontario. I'm currently a second year concurrent education student in psychology and ECE. So what this program is a 5-year program where I can get 2 degrees and my diploma in 5 years. Um, Essentially, this will prepare me to become a teacher. Usually, you would do your undergraduate degree first and then apply for teachers college, but I decided that I wanted to become a teacher. So right out of high school, I got accepted to do my undergraduate and get my teaching diploma. So yeah, I've always been passionate about working with children and learning. So I feel like those interests really inspired me and really influenced me to become a teacher. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here and talk all things inclusive education.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. I kind of wanted to first dig a bit into your introduction there. So you said you're from Windsor, Ontario, which is
Yes.
across from Detroit in America,
Mm,
correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
So I think a good starting point for this education conversation is to talk about like that dichotomy between like American education, the Canadian education here. Like, so that's sort of like a
Yeah.
great way to start is sort of yeah, we've heard that the American system is worse than the Canadian system according
hmm
to various factors and sort of like so my main question is being so close to Detroit, did anything from Detroit like sort of influence over in Windsor when you were growing up? Like, did it make inclusion worse, better?
That's a good question. Very thought provoking. I never really thought of the education system experience. I've heard that they do a lot of testing in order to get to post-secondary. While here in Canada, we don't really have that. Like in Ontario, they take your top six grade 12 marks in like if you want to go to university or college. So I do know that America has more of a test, more emphasis on testing, while here in Canada, it's not really that much about testing. I do know that there are other education systems around the world that are much better than the United States and Canada. For example, Finland, I heard that their education system is phenomenal and that so many students perform well and that they do not have that much assessment and testing, which I really do contribute to the factor why they are doing so well and why they are the top education for all ages.
Yeah, so you must have read my mind because I was just about to mention Finland. I was about to go on the topic of Finland. And that's because like they have such a highly rated system, like compared to the rest of the world. Like they do the standardized testing very minimally, to sort
Mhm.
of they do the testing that allows them to get ranked, but that's it. Like that's the only testing they do.
Yes.
And they keep on getting ranked in like consistently the top three education systems in the world, if not the top. Like they're consistently ranked
Exactly.
up there. And so like sort of tied to inclusive education, do you think then that the Finnish system gets inclusive education correct? And sort of like explain a bit more about like that sort of authentic inclusive education, if you could.
Yes, of course. So I do not know much about, I don't want to say stuff about the inclusive education in Finland, but I do know that they probably incorporate many different styles of learning that meets the needs of all children, of all youth from different backgrounds who have different abilities, which I think really contributes to their success. There's not only one way of learning. And this really brings something I learned in school in my personal experience, which is called universal design for learning. So what this is, it's like a teaching approach that works to um, accommodate the needs and abilities of all learners in the classroom and eliminates any barriers. So they take in consideration the physical space. Are the desks big enough? Are the desks perfect for people who have wheelchairs? Is there enough room in the classroom for a student who has a wheelchair to move around. They take in consideration, they provide the right resources. So there might be students who are hard of hearing. So the teacher might have a microphone to help with teaching the children. UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, really takes into consideration how the classroom is set up, in addition to what information is provided for the children and how they provide it.
So, in your opinion, based on your experience, do you think the system could work in a standardized system such as America's or Canada's, where we have more of the industrial revolution style of education in our society at the moment, rather than that sort of, Finnish system?
I do not. I think we need to like take a step away from assessment and all that testing, because it really just makes learning more stressful and anxiety inducing, as an early childhood educator as a student who is studying early childhood education, one of the most important things that we've learned is the importance of having play-based learning and learning from experiences and learning hands-on experiences, as opposed to just giving a child a worksheet and having them to write stuff and memorize stuff. Learning becomes more valuable when we have these experiences provided for the children, when they have these hands-on experiences, because they're able to enjoy that experience, which helps them really understand it. But I feel like this can extend to all ages, even post-secondary. Like, for example, in my classes, which I'm at the college right now, and everything's really hands-on, it's been a really great experience. And we had so many experiences where we get to go out and do like placement and actually take what we're learning and apply it there. But also during our class time, we can just either sit there, write the notes, listen to the lecture. The teacher can be like, for example, if we were to take children outside, we were to do this. But no, every single Tuesday we go to a school and we actually have those hands-on experiences with the children. You know what I mean?
I get that, but I'm also in the chemistry program where we have to take tests and exams to actually test our knowledge because we're learning theory. We're learning like theory and stuff. And so there's no other way in like the sciences sometimes other than to have an exam or a test to test our knowledge. And that's just because we're literally learning the theory and we need to know the theory. So how else
Yeah,
are we to really test that except for on a test? Like,
that is true. Like,
uh,
yeah, we do have exams and stuff like that. And I do find that having those hands-on learning experiences, I'm able to contribute and add that to my exam. Like, can I ask you a question?
oh yeah, no, this is a two-way street. Ask me, ask me
So,
away.
so like you're in chemistry. Have you ever had like the lab experiences? Have you ever had opportunities to like go to a lab or like those hands-on experiences where you weren't in the lecture room? And like how did that learning feel?
Well, in the lecture room, we don't really have hands-on learning, but that's just
Yeah.
because we're learning a bunch of theory. We can't really like sometimes
Yeah.
like the professor will bring in a prop of like when we were learning like about ringed carbon, like the benzene ring and stuff. We had like professors who brought in like the actual structure, the proper like orientations and stuff, like
Yeah.
to teach us the material. But like besides that, we haven't really had hands-on in the lecture, but I've definitely had labs, and that's the hands-on experience. And so what I find myself in like my profession is that we don't really get a lot of inclusive education because it's sort of we have to stick to this program. We don't really get a lot of authentic inclusion. We have our accessibility accommodations support group, like who take care of accommodations on tests and exams. But we don't really get in the class that I guess I call true authentic inclusion because we're talking about like where everyone's equal or equitable
Hmm.
or like we don't get that always. Of course, my professors and my TAs try to make that happen. Like they try their best. but it's really hard to incorporate it into something like a hardcore science because it's pretty rigid in what you have to learn. And so,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? That's the case.
Yeah, for me personally, I haven't had to use like the accessibility um things like that, but I do know that they do offer that, in that, for example, like the student can, if a student were to access that, they're able to go to a different area in a different room and have reading the questions. They also have the opportunity to do the questions early. I do know that the professors also work with the students, and they also ask like, hey, what works for you? Which I think is the most important thing for an authentic, inclusive education. You know, asking the student what they want and what works for them, because they are the center and that they are the ones being greatly affected.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about putting the students back at the center. I think my university's trying to do a bit of that, but it's sort of like I personally feel like they're trying to outreach to so many people that they lose the center of it, that all students should be included in those
Mm-hmm.
conversations. They reach out, they spread themselves so thin over so many topics. They forget that students are at the core of it. And recently we actually
Exactly.
had like student council elections that were important because recently in my university, which is Toronto Metropolitan University, we've actually found that there have been financial issues with former executives stealing students' money. And they can't provide details of that any further because they're pursuing legal action on that. And so
Oh my.
they're yeah. And it's sort of like they encourage people to vote and they're like, your vote's important. And that was when the first time in a while I felt like students were at the center because they were focusing on everyone voting, everyone being core to the university. Whereas in
Mm.
other cases, in other forms, in in other ways, um, it just has never been that way. It just hasn't. It
Yeah.
hasn't gone that way. It's been all about let's have all these variety of issues. Let's have all of these conversations. Let's have all these individual conversations about different topics. And let's not include students at the center of these conversations. Let's just, let's have a lecture on science, equity within science, but let's not have all students at the center of it. Let's just have this presenter present a keynote. Anyone who wants to go can go. It's rather than why not let's create an event where students talk about it rather than having a lecture.
Exactly. Like have a good conversation, discussion with students, because most institutions are like, check mark, we finished inclusive education part of our system, and it's simply just having a presenter who has nothing to do with the students come in and just speak, and it's not really authentic.
Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
so like I kind of like want to think about like my future in university because I myself, I know I've already done like probably 3 years of university total. I'm going to have to do another 3 years just to finish my undergraduate degree. And I'm planning on getting my master's afterwards, which will be at least another two
Oh,
years.
good for you.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm
So
considering it, but I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, I'm considering it just because like I'm passionate about my field and my topics, so I kind of want to, pursue that a bit further.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, that's besides the point. My main point here is that thinking like because like 10 years I'm probably still going to be learning things. I'm still going to be like in education, still learning things, even if it's through work, like through a job or through
Yeah,
like
100%.
whatever. So I kind of want to ponder what do you think inclusive education will look like in like the next 10 years?
Oh, wow. This is a good question. In the next 10 years. So I'll definitely be in the field. So I'll probably ask like what I love to see in the field. I
Yeah.
would love to see educators everyone getting the support, but I like to make this point, educators getting the support needed. So I got the opportunity to tutor in a grade 6 classroom, and I got to work with 3 students who had IEPs, individual education plans. So their on the learning track is a bit different from the rest of the class, and that's totally fine. That's totally okay. The fact that they had that there is that they have IEPs is really shows how we're one step closer to making learning inclusive. So anyways, I got the opportunity to be there in May and June, and the teacher was super happy and super grateful that I was there to help those 3 students who had IEPs and work with them one-on-one, while she got to teach the other half the rest of the class and help them with their work, And it got me thinking, like, so I only been here for like 2 months. How did the teacher help these students and help the other students for the rest of the 8 months? Like, inclusive education is ensuring that each child deserves to learn and learn at their own pace and learns in an authentic way. If that educator wasn't able to help the rest of the students and those 2 students of IEPs, like, learning wasn't effective or efficient, So like, I really do wish that there is support for educators who are able to provide the resources and give the time that the children have to learn, without having to feel like they have to cut them off and like, oh, I have to go with these students. Sorry, like, can try to learn on their own. Like, when I was in that classroom, I feel like it was she was so grateful, and she was just so happy that I was there to help those students. And this might get people thinking like, well, you're separating those 3 students who have IEPs from the rest of the students. Does that make it inclusive? But no, like, inclusive education comes with equity. It's providing all the students with the right tool resources that helps them reach their own full potential, The students who are still in the classroom, they're still learning alongside with their friends, but they got the extra support needed in order to help them reach their full potential, just like their classmates, which I think is important. So I'll definitely love to see more support, more educators in the classroom being able to help those students and give the time those students need in their learning, because they deserve that.
Oh, that brings up an interesting point. I want to dig a bit deeper into what you mentioned of authenticity. So, what do you really mean by that? Like, what's the real difference between that authentic inclusion and then just the broad scope inclusion? Like, I'm trying to, like, maybe I'm missing something, but I'm trying to dig a bit deeper here, because I think we say authentic inclusion, we say being true to yourself, being like all this truthfulness, but at the core of it, what is that really? What is that at the center of everything?
For me personally, I think authentic inclusion, like I mentioned before, is ensuring that the classroom is that the equality is good, but equity is more important, For example, I remember in my diversity inclusion class, which I'm currently in, the teacher provided this image. And on this image, there was this super tall person looking over the fence trying to watch a baseball game, and there's a super short person. And equality could be like giving both of them a box to stand on so they can see over the fence, but it wouldn't be fair because the tall person who can already see is able to see more, while the short person still struggles to see. Equity is giving everyone the resources that they personally need for themselves to reach their full potential. So in the image of equity, the short person was given a bunch of stepping stools so they were able to see the fence, while the tall person wasn't given because they could already see. So in terms of education, it's important that if we want to be authentic, we really have to consider each student, not just add things and throw things like, yeah, we finished our inclusion, everything's inclusive, everything's ready, but to really just to value each individual and ensure that each individual has the proper tools and resources that they need, that they want, that they reach their goals.
Okay, so just to touch on that a bit, you mentioned equity a lot, and I just want to bring up a point that there's a lot of criticism surrounding it because there's a lot of people who feel like equity is going to create a further imbalance. Even though, like in that perfect image of the baseball, everyone gets like the extra boxes so everyone can see equally, right? Like everyone can see the game, everyone can enjoy the game equally. But the sort of criticism of that is if you overestimate the number of boxes and you overestimate like how much you need to give to someone, it could eventually lead to that sort of one person's taller up than the other, or someone is on a higher power scale than the other rather than at that equal level. And so like it's the difference between I guess it's the difference between do we want equality of outcome where everyone is has the equal opportunity, everyone has like that equal like level playing field, as mentioned before, or do we want to create that imbalance where we have those different levels and potentially risk having more inequity or more inequality?
That's a good question. Um, that's something that I do know, like people do talk about, and that's a controversy behind it. But I do really think that it's important that we have these conversations and that we understand on where to stop and where to go in order to really ensure that there is no imbalance, having conversations and really listening to what other people on the equal level, and that there is no hate or lashing towards others who they may be getting more than others. Conversations and speaking about it is important, and I think that's what we need to do, because I feel like people can straight up say, "Hey, that's not fair," and that can cause clashing and hate and anger. But I think we need to like stop and think and have these conversations, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think we definitely need to, have those conversations about how do we make this more fair for everyone while also making sure
Mhm.
that equity doesn't go too far because well, yes, equity can be beneficial if left unchecked, as we've seen. It can be detrimental. It can be detrimental to our society if we leave it like completely unchecked, rather than
Mhm.
doing it in the proper tool. It's a tool like anything else, and we need to be very precise and very careful of how we use it. So, sort of to tie it back into why we have this podcast, with the Youth Advisory Committee and Reaction for Inclusion and all that, how do
Yes.
you think the act can support this? Support, like, getting more authentic inclusion, more like balanced approach to making sure that everyone gets what they need to have a better education.
I think that is important for Yak to really listen. And again, like I said, to put the children, youth, whoever's receiving and whoever in the inclusive education system at the center, really listening to what they have to say. Because if we really want to create change, we must understand the people who are affected. That way, when we understand and listen, we can support them in um, achieving that inclusive education that they want and hunger for. I think that I'm so open and being part of CLO has helped me be more understanding and listen to other people. And since we are such adults, I feel like having this experience has helped me in my work with the children and tutoring with my placement experiences, has helped me be more open, has helped me really put the individual child's needs at the center. So for example, whenever I'm planning uh, assessments or curriculum, I really consider each individual student and how they are doing. And I ask them, hey, what do you think of this? Would you like this? Hey, I'm thinking of doing this activity. Are you okay if I bring this? I ask that to the students because I think that's more important. So, and I listen to what they have to say. So, and they seem to enjoy that when I ask and listen to what they have to say and their input. So I feel like if YAC and CLO were to listen to what individuals have to say, we would be on a road to an authentic, inclusive education. And yeah.
No. As much as you might dislike this, there are those who would call that crazy. Some people think children are incapable of having a voice. No, no, like honestly, some people believe that adults should be making the decisions for children. And that is because adults know better. Adults have more developed brains and all that. Like that's sort of like the other side here. And it's sort of like if you look at that, it's like you're looking at it from that perspective of, is the child's brain really fully developed? If you look at it from that perspective, you sort of see where they're coming from in that because the child's brain's not fully developed, they don't know how to fully ask for what they want. But I'm assuming in your experience that's not the case.
You are right. Your assumption is right, Karen. Yeah, children, yes, their brain is developing, but the perspective they have on the world is just so amazing. I feel like if we take, we'll definitely see another whole nother perspective, you know. Yes, that they may not have the control to control their emotions, but that's totally normal, you know. As adults and as an educator myself, I'm there to support them, you know. As in my program, child is at the center. The child's at the center of the learning, you know. We just don't say, okay, we're going to teach them math today, we're going to teach them science. No, we look at the interest of the child and listen to what they have to say. So, for example, for instance, the children on my kindergarten placement were very, very interested in color. Like they were trying to figure out how the color to mix. And if, hey, like, do you want me to bring in Skittles and to do the six Skittle experiment where we put the Skittles on a plate and then we pour the water and then so that they learned that because they thought of, hey, like they thought of that this complex question and they were able to figure it out and understood that, hey, like density has something to do with that and something along those lines. It's been a while since I've done an experiment, but like, yeah, children have so much to offer. And I feel like that if we really take their perspectives into consideration and youth perspectives and teenagers' perspectives and anyone young into consideration, we're able to get a whole new different light, a whole new different take on things. And I feel like having many different perspectives is one way to help solve a problem and will help create the change that we in Yak strive for.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is some parents will watch this and be like, what the heck are you teaching these kids? You're not really teaching them anything. You're teaching them about colors. You're not teaching them the important things like the math, the science, the history. What is this? What is this education system? It's broken.
Thing is, it's there. It's there. Just don't see it because it's hidden through those hands-on experiences. Like I remember coming to the EC program thinking, okay, I have to plan in math and we have to know their letters, have to know their numbers, but it's there. Like if you see a child playing with trucks, you can just say, hey, like how many trucks do you have there? And they can count the trucks. Boom, math, done. If they're playing with cars and they're putting it down on the slide or with the ball, oh, can a basketball go down the slide faster than a bouncy ball? That's like some sort of science thing, velocity, something, I don't know. Like, it's all hidden there. So I think that's one thing that people don't understand, especially if you don't have the knowledge behind child development, is that play, like having those play experiences helps with their learning.
I'd hate to cut this conversation, but I think we've had a full developed conversation. We've covered pretty much like as much as we can. I'd like to thank you
Yes.
for being on the podcast to have this conversation, and it was great talking.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cameron. I enjoyed this, and yeah, this is a great conversation.